Hi. So hi, good evening, everyone who's joined us. So we'll get started, and I think people will join along the way, but we have quite a few, so we'll get started already. And so welcome everyone to the part 2 webinar series of the Sustainable Energy for Cold Storage. This webinar series is about the financial models and business model innovations on specifically for agri walk-in cold storages. So I do want to start off a little bit by actually talking about the silver lining. So we do know that, while the pandemic and while COVID has really, eroded a lot of livelihoods and health systems, it has few silver linings, which hopefully we can convert into longer term actions, right? We do see a renewed sense of urgency across the sector, across the board. There are definitely a lot of, this is a chance to really challenge the status quo. If you look at existing value chains, existing ecosystems, how do you really push to create better decentralized models, more resilient models, and better ecosystems at local level, right? And the third, and I think the most critical, silver lining that we've been seeing over the past 5 to 6 months is really on collaboration. I think there's been unprecedented collaboration. We see some great examples of public-private partnerships, as well as sectoral, interdisciplinary, and sort of cross-sector partnerships, which is extremely important to look at while building stronger systems. So these are mainly what we see. And I think given rise in temperatures, given climate change, the largest population is the population that's growing perishable goods. And therefore, I think the kind of need and demand that we saw, it's critical to look at agri cold storages as common good, as important as water almost, right? So you have water, without water you can't really grow, and without storage. And I think it's a combination of that growing and storage, appropriate storage, that is going to lead to increased farm incomes and increased agricultural outputs for the farmers, right? So, starting with that brief intro, I'm actually going to say that, cold storage today is not a luxury. It is a necessity in most cases. And just to give you a quick brief on what we discussed in the last webinar for people that didn't attend the last webinar, just a quick summary. I'm just going to share my screen so you can see it. So during the last webinar, we mainly had discussions on technologies. There were insights gathered from over 15 technology manufacturers, actually maybe close to 20, but 15 of them were really presented on the challenges on right from developing technology, innovating on technology, implementing technology solutions, as well as servicing and maintaining them, right? So in the last panel, we actually had Plus, New Leaf, Cool Crop, and InfiCold as the primary sort of panel speakers talking about technology. And very briefly, we went into the spectrum of cold storage, and I'm not going to go too much deeper into this slide, but I just request Rachita to maybe share a link of what happened the last time in case you're interested in seeing the presentation, the documents from the from the enterprises, as well as from the sort of context setting presentation. You can have that. There's also a YouTube link if you want to watch that presentation as well. This webinar, as I mentioned, is on business model innovations. We will be having a third one, which I'll introduce briefly right towards the end of the session. With that, let's get started. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Shripati. Shri, if you can switch on your video for a brief context setting of 10 to 15 minutes. The work that he is going to present has been collated from multiple NGOs, enterprises, FPOs, government stakeholders. So we hope this will set a strong context for the very exciting panel that we have lined up just after the context setting. Over to you, Shri. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, Huda. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. I'm going to start sharing my screen.
Sure.
Yes, I think it should be visible.
Visible, you can just make it full screen and start.
Yes, it is full screen now, actually. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Huda. So, just to get started, with the, I mean, this presentation is to just set the, sort of context, to set the pace for the interesting session we are going to have with some of the key stakeholders from technologies to the implementers on the ground. So this is the flow of the presentation. We're just going to have a start with with an introduction of the story, and then just getting into some of the summary and also some of the insights that we have received from the discussion that we had with the partners, and also then just sort of concluding it with with some of the some brief insights. Um, so yeah, I mean, just I think we all I think Huda just put in a very right manner that it's not a luxury anymore, but it's more of an it's more of a necessity. So just considering just a sort of opportunity to start with. So there's a remote community in North Karnataka called Kunabi. So they grow more than 40 varieties of tubers, which are very native to that particular region in north of Karnataka. And they were it's growing only one season, but it was they were not able to sort of have a better market access, and there was a demand coming in from the nearby the it's very close to a very popular tourist destination, and they were very hard to finding it hard to sort of preserve it to sell it in the off season as well. So one of our partners, it was it was Cool Crop who did the intervention there with a cold storage, a farm gate cold storage installation there, which really sort of took the access to market and the access to their the sort of opportunity for the farmers to a next level. So in a year they sort of had an income raise of more than 1 lakh, but more than everything they saved, like there was a reduction in wastage from 35 to 5%, and there was an interesting market opportunity in terms of a tuber mela that's been organized by government, where these the tubers were actually sold. So I mean it's just one of the many sort of it sort of represents some of the interesting successful stories that we have heard from different partners. So just that sort of very nicely leads into where are we seeing the necessity for cold storage. So there are different stages of post harvest value chain, and unfortunately, I mean, as you see in the numbers, we have more than 90,000 crores per year of post harvest losses in India. I mean, and one of the most primary causes is actually the poor storage and transportation facilities. And when it comes to the perishable products, the fruits and vegetables, the percentage goes up even higher. It's around 20% of products that goes wasting that gets wasted because of improper sort of post harvest value chain. So the one that we are going to sort of deep dive today is the one shown in the second column. That's the storage and at the farm gate. How does actually the cold room, this sort of cold room and cold storage makes a difference? And also there is an interesting trend in terms of at the post processing, at the sort of front end, what we call as at the retailer, the most sort of organized retailer space as well, where things are really being picked up. So just I think just to sort of giving narrowing it down to what are the main sort of nodal points that we are looking at. If we could divide it into pre-processing stage, that's where we at the farm gate. I mean it could be an individual farmer, it could be a farmer group. So to that's where the product gets picked up. And then it comes to the necessity for cold storage for transportation, the refills, and then finally at the front end. So at the post processing stage is where I think a lot of innovative models are also being emerging. So that's at the either it could be an institutional level, like for example a temple storing food for the devotees who come there, or it could be an organized retail company which is actually using the decentralized cold storage solution to sort of as a pickup point for their distribution. So these are the sort of three main nodal points. And as Sudha was saying, so we had a very interesting interaction with different stakeholders, as we did with the technology webinar. So even for this, we had some very interesting insights coming in from Cool Crop, Ecozen, plus Inficol, New Leaf, as well as Solar Cool Tech. So these are some of the sort of represent a good sort of chunk of technology players who sort of provided the inputs for their innovations in ownership and financial models. And we also looked upon some of the models in Africa. I mean, I'm Promethean as well in the Indian product list, as well as in Africa, for example. We looked at some of the interesting innovation and business models that have been tested. And to look at the end user segmentation, it cuts across from individual farmers to farmer producing organizations, the farmer groups, to private institutes and the retail companies, as well as the local sort of governments owning it, for the mandis. And when it comes to financial models, I think there have been multiple models have been tested from all the technology players, from leasing to the sort of and bank financing, as well as service models as well. I mean, of course, I think it will be sort of discussed in detail during the panel as well. But when it comes to ownership model, I think there's a very interesting sort of combination permutation that happens here. I mean, it could be financed by a government, but usually it might be owned by a mandi or a farmer producing organization and will be used by the farmers. So it sort of cuts across different aspects as well. I mean, one of the interesting models as well, where the financing happens with the tech supplier itself, but owned by the FPOs and then used by the farmers as well. So, and also there have been instances where long-term bank financing has happened, and to either to an individual farmer or a farmer producing organizations, which again own it. So there are these interesting sort of ownership models that have come out with the intervention that we have seen. Now, just to put it in together, just to sort of summarize it. So yes, I think the constant on the left side you see is the equipment supplier. But for that equipment to be effectively sort of reaching the community, reaching the farmers, there are multiple ways of doing it. So obviously, I mean, there are, if you want to sort of broadly divide it, it will be the own model, the sales model, and the leasing, the sort of servicing or leasing model. But then the one of the major sort of the stakeholders at the end user segmentation is the aggregator. That's the farmer sort of producing. We will see the numbers in the next slides as well. And also there are in case the individual farmer itself, himself or herself, is capable enough to sort of own or lease out a system, a cold storage system, that's also being sort of tested out. And also in one of the interesting models in Africa, where they've tested out micro sort of franchisee model, where women sort of do it in a franchisee model, then in a hub and spoke model where they work with other women entrepreneurs as well. Interesting to see the pay as you store and leasing out model, which is obviously less capital intense, but it hasn't picked up that much in India. We'll just get into that, why it hasn't happened. There have been interesting insights coming in for the partners as well. In terms of insights, in the financial models, there is a good spread, from bank financed to owned by a private company. But a couple of interesting points that to be, if we could pick it up, is so the ones that are owned by government, or even for example, as you see on the left, the bank finance for FPOs is not scaled up to a level in terms of numbers, because there have been a good sort of capital subsidies that have been provided to FPOs. So the bank financing was not really picked up for in case of FPOs. And there is also interesting successful cases of bank finance cold rooms, where there are like either 5 to 7 year period of loan term with an interesting rate of 11 to 13%, with usually, I think, with the discussions we've had with the partners. So the sort of average financial model that works out is around 20 to 30,000 per month for either it's an individual farmer or an FPO. That sort of works out for both the entrepreneurs as well as the tech enterprises. Going towards the end user segmentation, I think here there is a significant sort of difference or distinguish you can do here. So the 44% of the end users are actually the farmer producing groups. I mean, the reason is obvious, because they have sort of the wherewithal to own it, and they have a good ownership model, and also that's where the products get collected. So so that's one of the, I think, around 50%. I mean, half of the interventions that we have looked into are actually owned by farmer groups, but obviously financed from different sources. And then if you see, one of the models that are emerging is the farm to fork model, retail companies. I mean, we know that that's a whole sort of the companies which are building that bridge between farms and the households, and they are really leveraging on the decentralized cold storage models and in providing the solution. And as you see on the right, in terms of products, I mean, yes, majority are the seasonal vegetables and fruits, but also what is interesting is some of the products that really make sense or get valued in this process is the geographically unique sort of products. I mean, let's say if it's an apple from Himachal Pradesh, if you want to use it in if you want it to be consumed in Bangalore, that's where it's sort of that's where the value is. And also the premium quality vegetables, and also value or added products. Let's say if you want to dry it, and then if you want to add some value to the product, that's where the cold storage sort of solution, the whole model gets sustainable. And meat at the front end, where to sort of distribute to the households. Then also in some of the interesting cases where when it's an off season for vegetables, there have been models tested out where flowers have been kept in the winter, especially during the festival seasons, where the flowers have the sort of higher rate, and that's also one of the main product that's being kept. Now, so second sort of last part of the presentation, where there have been multiple very interesting case studies across the technology players, across the business models and financial models as well. But just picking up a few. So this is an interesting story. As you see on the top there, so this was a retail company financed and owned business model, whereas the product was used by the end users, in the form of the farmer groups in the state of Himachal Pradesh for cherry fruit. So it's a very high perishable fruit which needs a proper pre-cooling. So and there have been a lot of wastage in because of the lack of sort of cold storage system. And then one of the partner, I think it's a very successful case story from EcoZen, where they provided the cold storage, which actually enabled the farmers to sell their cherry fruits with the premium quality that it's grown, and it has reached destinations Bangalore, Chennai, and as far as the cities in south and east and west as well. And also the premium price for the products also been obtained. Now, looking into the second case study, which is sort of very different right now because it's an institution owned. There is no sort of, as of it's not a market-based business model, but it's really looking at an institution becoming sort of more sustainable in terms of their food usage, their consumption. So it's a temple in Karnataka, the Gokana temple in Karnataka, where thousands of devotees come daily, there for food, and they had a necessity to really have a unit where they could store rice, they could store the vegetables and fruits, as well as the coconut. I mean, coconut has been one of the main sort of products there, and considering it's in the coastal region of Karnataka where the temperature and humidity is quite high, there was a very critical need of the cold storage. So the partner, Inficold, one of the technology partner, provided this cold storage, which sort of showed the significant improvement in terms of reduction in wastage. I mean, as you see in the numbers there, I mean, they speak for themselves. So there are hundreds and thousands of pieces of coconuts and vegetables, in terms of their quantity, have been saved from wastage. And also because now the temple has a capacity to buy it in bulk because of the cold storage, they're also sort of saving in terms of their capital investment as well. And the third case study, it's again a farmer group in Nepal. Implemented by Plus Technologies, where considering the remoteness and the rough terrain of Nepal, so they grow the premier quality of vegetables and fruits, and unfortunately was not sort of reaching to the customers because the suppliers, I mean the companies would not be were not being able to sort of come to these places and pick up quite often because of the remoteness and the tough terrain. So this cold storage actually sort of helped in not just for the farmers to get better pricing and also constant sort of market access, but at the same time also reduce the the wastage by 20 to 30%. So that's another sort of business model and also a different sort of end user segment. And coming into a couple of cases in Africa, so this is an interesting case in Nigeria, where if you see the end user segment, this is not really at the farm. It's not really at the farm, but it's actually at sort of the urban market. So these are the sort of small holder, like business owners who would need this cold storage to keep their products fresh and safe for their next day if it's not get sold on the same day. So And this was sort of done with a pay as a store or a subscription model. And there was an interesting sort of business case, business study was also done where with a 94% of utilization rate, the actual capital investment does make sense. So around 5 of these units were installed in the markets of Nigeria. And I mean, it was installed by cold hubs in Africa. And again, the product segment is vegetables and fruits. Coming to this probably last case in Africa, in Nigeria, where so it's actually Kenya. It's a solar fees. It's the it's the company. I think what we sort of one of the interesting insights from all the discussions we've had as well. It's not the technology. It's not just the financing. It's also the overall sort of ecosystem that you need to look at. And this in one of their interesting models, what they've done is they've trained the local sort of women and youth entrepreneurs in the region where to sort of in a skill transfer program to sort of look after and provide service of these cold storage solutions in a very decentralized manner in these villages, and also through the hubs and spokes model in a micro franchisee model where women, the rural women would sort of become the champion entrepreneurs owning the system, and then also becoming sort of models for model sort of business, providing the business models for the other women in the region as well. So this was sort of an example of how technology complemented with different aspects such as training and capacity building and sort of skill transfer makes a lot of difference. Sort of summarizing, what we've been talking, I think it'll be dealt in, very much detail in the webinar as well. So there is a need. It's not just the technology, but also what goes into it, the product, the research related to products. I mean, there are differences in the way the mango is sort of stored and the way the bananas are stored, right? So just as an example. So there is a need for integrating the whole research and development into the form of agri products with the cold storage, the whole ecosystem. Then also in terms of how is it stored, how long is it stored, and what needs to be grown, and what's the crop pattern that needs to be done in that region. That also makes a lot of difference in terms of the sustainability of the cold storage system. And obviously, this is going to be dealt in detail, the financing and business models as well. And one of the interesting things about local entrepreneurship is if these models need to be scaled up, you need to have a like a very sustainable and a very strong local entrepreneurship model who sort of take these cold storage and sort of make sure that it reaches the last mile at the farm gate. And then effective forward linkages. I mean, you can have the best technologies and can have the best business the financial models. If your market access is not set up, then it's not going to work. So there is a big need of actually building these sort of forward linkages as well. And just concluding it, yes, I mean, we all know that there is a need for it in terms of the financing and business models. But just to sort of summarizing it, there due to the sort of initial capital requirement for the technology itself, the lease or the service model does seem like a sort of good model for technology providers to go ahead. But for that to happen, there is of course a need of long-term capital for the technology providers itself. So it's not just the financing for the end users, but also financing for for the technology providers as well. And then in terms of the taxation and also interest-free loans that could be given to the farmer groups to sort of access these technology, access this solution will be very helpful. And also what it's been observed is because there is a need for a critical minimum volume of produce to be kept in it. So most of the times the investment sort of goes into places where it's feasible. So maybe not at the farm gate level. So that needs to be sort of looked at from different ways. I think that's going to be discussed as well. And I mean, that's necessarily, I mean, that's what it's saying in the second last point, where it's sort of catering to the larger farmers and organized farmer groups. That's good. But then if it goes to the smaller farmer groups, how do we build the business model so that it becomes sustainable as well? And just to sort of give a like the way the dairy sort of structured cooperative model that's been tested of dairy could be something which could be looked at for the FNB model as well. So I conclude here and also just acknowledge all the partners who gave inputs for these insights, and really looking forward to the sort of carrying it, taking forward from here with a very interesting discussion. So over to you, Huda.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sri. So we'll move into the panel and dive into that. I think if we can just get the panel on the screen, maybe if Sri, you stop sharing, it should work. Yeah. Great. Thank you so much to my panelists. Could you please switch on your videos as well? think Devendraji, your video is not on yet. Perfect. Okay, great. Okay, so we have with us, let's dive straight into the panel. And we have with us a very, very diverse and interesting set of panelists and esteemed panelists. We have Garima from Sini and Gautam from Harsha Trust. And both of them have worked very closely with small and marginal farmers and really kind of into the structure of FPOs and the organization of FPOs is what the expertise that both Gautam and Garima bring. We have Jofi and Devendra, Jofi from Promethean and Devendra from Ecozen. And both of them really come from the technology supplier, the solution provider side, if I may say. Promethean is just about getting into, I think it's been a couple of years where they're just getting into agri-cold storages. And Ecozen, I think out of the 340 that have been implemented in India today, the maximum chunk of them have been actually done by Ecozen. So a lot of learnings emerging there. And I think almost every year they've come up with new financial and business models to actually see what can work best. We also have Vedant here from Dehat. So Dehat is basically a sort of farmer to retail and farmer to end user platform. So they work on different aspects of inputs as well as outputs. And Vedant specifically specializes in sort of post-harvest output as well. So I request each of the panelists to just give a 1-minute introduction on yourself, and then I'll start sort of asking all of you questions. Thank you. So maybe we can start the introductions actually with Vedant from Dehat, then we'll go.
Hi everyone. I've been working in the post-harvest agri supply chain for the last 5 years. I started my own venture in the agri space by the name of Cobasco, funded by Matrix Partners. And recently, 2-3 months back, I joined Dehat and I'm currently leading North Zone operations in FNV. I've primarily dealt in the post-harvest supply chain a lot in terms of procurement from farmers, local aggregators, traders, and similarly on the sales side, we have dealt with mandi agents, distributors, retailers, corporates, processors. So in the post-harvest supply chain, I would say that a lot of experience in terms of we bring in. Yeah.
Thank you. Devendra?
Hi everyone, I am Devendra. I am from Ecozen. We started off with Ecozen almost a decade back, and Ecozen actually works across the agri value chain. We also provide solutions for irrigation, which are primarily solar driven. Meeting farmers and learning that while irrigation is solved, but they are still losing their produce due to whatever issues in terms of price fluctuations, in terms of lack of market evacuation, so on. We went on to build the cooling solution that we are here to talk about. And what we also learned during the course of the process is that the cooling solution is great, but farmers and producers are afraid to go to farther markets. And that is because of various reasons. And there we came in and we also started providing a solution to help these people and link them to the farther markets as well. So today we have been working with almost products are deployed on almost 30,000 farms. And we're working with these various farmers across different commodities, helping some of them with irrigation, some of them with cooling, some of them with market linkages. And we're really passionate about the agriculture post-harvest space. And we feel that the way the supply chain has been designed today is more suited for the bulk of commodities such as potato, onion, tomato, and so on. Right. Whereas the more perishable commodities, maybe a cherry or a lychee or a grape or a pomegranate or a leafy, etc. The supply chains have not been designed around these to really scale up and get to farther markets. So I think we're very passionate about how technology, how business models, how different financial models, how different collaborations can really work together to solve this problem of the supply chain. And we are at it, and we look forward to this session.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Devendra. Jofi, you want to go next?
Yeah, hi everybody, and first of all, thanks to the Selco team for setting up this webinar. I think it's a great opportunity for sharing knowledge. So my name is Jofi Joseph. I work with Promethean Power Systems. We are an end-to-end cold chain solutions company. We basically have a patented technology for storing and releasing thermal energy. we started off in the dairy industry in 2014. And that's where most of our work was, and the reason we focused on dairy initially because it is a natural perishable. So there was a need, for decentralized chilling systems, and we have installed over 1,500 units, bulk milk coolers across India and some of them outside India. Last couple of years is when we started focusing even on the cold room space and the refrigerated vehicle space. And right now, our goal is to be an end-to-end cold chain company, farmer to the consumer. And we are working towards our goal through a mix of product innovation, business model innovation, and a lot of IoT incorporated. So just to take off from where Shripati said, so there is a ready model in dairy where community level chilling really works. Because the community level chilling not only brings the cold chain infrastructure to the farmer, but also brings a market access in the form of a dairy. And I believe that if we can replicate that kind of a model for the fruits and vegetable business, then that will take us a long way forward in establishing cold chain for even FNV.
Sure.
Thanks.
Garima, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Hello everyone, I'm Garima, working in Senior Tata Trust from the last 6 years. And I have an experience of working in this with the tribals of Jharkhand from the last 12 years. And in Jharkhand, we are working with about 7 FPO, farmer producer companies, as well as some entrepreneur model. Also, we are working with more than 100 entrepreneurs, mostly on the pre-production side of the agriculture. In the through the FPC, actually, we are mostly increasing the income of the farmer, and this is mostly to the high value agriculture like tomato, like brinjal, chili. We do in the large scale, and we have also installed the cold storage to which we can do marketing also. So this is all about it.
Sure. Thank you, Garima. Gautam sir, last but not the least.
Hi, good evening all. My name is Gautam. I represent Harsa Trust. Harsa Trust is a not-for-profit organization, particularly working in southern and western part of Odisha. I'm a agriculture professional, and I have an experience of near about 20 years in this field in the development sector. Harsa Trust generally works in, with the tribals and basically farm and off-farm and on-farm based livelihoods. So in this context, actually, when we wanted to increase the income as well as enhance the livelihoods of the poorest of the poor in the tribal pockets of Odisha, so we also adopted this value chain, entire value chain, in aggregating, marketing, and storing of vegetables products, vegetables and other products. So in this way, actually, we have been associated with Selco and Ecogen as well for hiring having this infrastructure for us, and this has been maintained and managed by the FPO, as shared by Huda and Sipati. So this is all about me and my organization.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you for those introductions. So, sir, we'll start with you itself. And, I think these are well-known facts that, currently the system is such that, it promotes very centralized, very large storage and, otherwise moving it towards decentralized and remote and farm gate and to a small farmer level is very difficult. And that's mainly because of the value proposition, right? You're not able to prove that value proposition, show that value proposition. And unless you show that and unless you have that, there is no income increase, there is no financial model. So so specifically on value proposition, what are some of your learnings on creating that value proposition, at a decentralized level, at an FPO level, at a farmer level? What are some of your experiences on creating the value?
Thank you, Huda. Actually, if I say the context of cold storage facilities, in particularly in the tribal area, I would say keeping cool in a very hot market, actually. So the reason behind it, that why I am calling it, because market is always heartless. Market is not going to listen anyone. And whenever we are thinking that to enhance the livelihood of the poorest of the poor, who small and marginal farmers, in most of the cases you will find the small and marginal farmers are there, and the tribals are basically, although they are having a good quantity of land up to 25 acres, but the accessible land is very, very small in quantity. So each and every farmer, maximum they are holding is near about 1.5 acre. So what they can do. So in this context, if at all we are going to promote some sustainable livelihood from forest-based livelihood to agri-based livelihood, so definitely there was a challenge for us how to bring it forward. So then when we talk about agriculture, everybody will definitely talk about infrastructure facilities, how the infrastructures are arranged within yourself to address all those issues. So I have seen both the failures and success within our models actually. When we started doing these agricultural interventions with the families, and we found that the products are not selling well in the market. So that's compelled us to go for one cold storage facilities. So we approached so many people that whether one cold storage be possible in those locality or not. So it was easy to say that Huda has already shared that nowadays cold storage is not at all one luxury goods or items, but it is essential. It is necessity for the farmers. So in that context, actually, we try to leverage fund for the cold storage. Unfortunately, we came across Selco Foundation, and we also proposed that Selco with partnering partner support from Ecogen also we established one cold storage. After establishment of cold storage, actually how it is going to be maintained actually. So that created a lot of problems. We were thinking that a lot of productions are going in the field, and people will definitely come and they will store their vegetables in the cold storage, and they will definitely get the market, get the better prices in the market. But it didn't happen in the initial stage for 4 months, because efficiently running cold storage, we need to bring vegetables from the field and keep it in the cold storage. And when the price is higher, then we need to go to the market for selling. So it didn't happen in our case. And the efficient, we could able to run the business of cold storage in near about 40% capacity. So that was heartening for us. And although we, from the initial state, we have decided that definitely this will run through the farmer producer organization. Whenever coming to the ownership, I would say the one component is ownership, and second component is management. Farmer producer company can take the ownership, but as far as management is concerned, definitely they need support from external agencies, definitely who can provide hand-holding support for a considerable time and space, so that they are in a position to take their own decision and how to do this in a large scale capabilities. And the financial models we need to work out with those farmer producer organization. And actually during during the past 4 months, actually we faced a lot of problems, because it was not running on 100% capacity, and farmers are not getting a good price. In that context, actually, when we try to conceptualize all those things and just to summarize all those things, I try to, my team try to do a better analysis of this situation. And we found that product pricing, promotion, and profit, these are the all criteria that we need to maintain whenever we are going to establish one enterprise. I'm talking about the product. Let's say product. If the product is vegetable and perishable, so definitely we need to decide which vegetables and which quantity it should be within the cold storage. And the cold storage we have, definitely it has a certain temperature range, 4 degrees centigrade up to 4 to 7 degrees centigrade. So how to store the vegetables, and which vegetables can be stored within this temperature range? Because whenever we are running it through the FPOs, all the farmers who are producing different diverse kind of vegetables, they will definitely come to you and say that please keep my vegetables in the cold storage. And when the market will rise, definitely I will take the vegetables from the cold storage. So this is another problem that we faced. So later on, we decided that definitely 1 or 2 crops will be the winner crops, where the cold storage will be exclusively used for this. And second is the pricing factor, whether it is it is going to run by a lease model, means the farmers who are going to sell, going to keep their produce, so they will pay something per kg or quintal, or whatever, if at all the farmer producer organization is managing those things. So definitely they will fix this entire farmer producer organization will procure the produce, and later on they will sell the produce. So whatever profit will come, profit or loss, definitely that will be distributed among the farmer producers. The risk can be minimized in this case, because these are all perishable goods.
Right.
And very perishable. I would say perishability is the only one nature where there is need of cold storage. And I have seen the failures of government department as well. If at all the institution has not been capacitated enough, then what will happen? Because you can create the infrastructure, no doubt, but to run the infrastructure in a profitable manner, we need support from the institution. So who is going to run the institution? Who is going to provide this support? How to run this entity in a larger, in the profitable manner? This is more important, because I have seen in Odisha, they have created so many institutions, so many infrastructure, but in few cases also they have not been able to open the key of the cold storage. Only yes, this is
right. I've heard those cases as well. Yeah. No, but very nicely put, I think. So you said, there are, yeah.
Yeah,
so,
I know there are few participants from the government department as well, because it is the true fact actually I am talking about.
So we'll come to the ownership model, sir. I'll ask you more on the ownership model. But I think very nicely put, you said product, price, promotion, and profit. These are the four things that matter. Yeah. And you said, also in terms of time, effort, and resources. I'll come back to you on the ownership model. Okay. Also in terms of time, effort, and resources, you said, it took maybe 4 to 6 months to actually utilize the full capacity, see the income generation. I want to come to you, Devendra, because while he, has an experience in a region, you have an experience cross-cutting regions. So what is that value creation to prove the income increase, time, effort, any learnings on that to kind of get it going and show the financial model, hopefully in a more efficient manner?
So I think just to understand your question better, I think you want me to articulate as to how can cold stores lead to better value creation. Is that correct?
Basically, before implementing, how much time, effort has it taken you to prove the value proposition to the FPOs or the farmers, to show that income increase, so that you can then design a, financial model and business model? I mean, I'm guessing that's a heavy transaction cost, right? To actually sort of show that value creation at a farm gate or at an FPO level. But yeah, a little bit on that.
So I think we are still doing it, to be honest. We are still yet to hit the kind of volumes you would really expect to deliver. I think we are still educating FPOs. We are still learning from them as well. Okay. So I think it has been a lot of effort, a lot of time to kind of...
some tips and tricks for people who are doing the same.
Some tips and tricks for people who are doing the same. So guys, I think right now what we have come to learn is that there are very specific modules which really work. So I think you could probably build on that, learn from that, and kind of work to take this further. So what we've seen is that the model around short-term storage, okay, because the mandis are open or mandis are closed, okay. So the farmers, they kind of struggle to sell their produce. So over there, the cold room really does a great job for short-term storage of commodities. Okay. Then there are other supply chain models wherein you have to take a commodity to a farmer. Say lychee is being grown in Bihar, and that's like one of the 3 places in the country where it is being grown, and there's loud all across. So people try to take it by flights. That's the most preferred option across the country, and that leads to very high logistics cost. Okay, we've been able to figure out how to do it by road using cold chain and reduce the logistics cost significantly. Okay, so that's another model wherein you work to reduce the logistics cost by shifting from air to road. Okay, then if you talk about the third model is wherein you try to do very long-term storage. So you try to do 3 months, 4 months. So while that could be possible for certain commodities, it is not possible for all of them. So if you talk about price fluctuations, I saw the case study which was shown that the price fluctuations really benefit for 3 to 4 months it was kept. So tubers are easier to store. For some commodities it will work, okay? But for majority of perishable commodities, storing longer requires more delicate control of moisture, of temperature, of the air composition as well. Okay, so I think we are yet to get there. Even we as a company are yet to get there in terms of achieving like 3 months or 3 months storage for tomatoes, for example. Because if you're able to store it for 3 months, that means a lot more of value creation in terms of price fluctuation. So I think these are some of the models which are there.
Sure.
These are some of the challenges which are there. And we took our own sweet time because what we realized is that to really demonstrate a value proposition, you need multiple of these pieces together. You need to have a buy-in of the growers, you need to have a buy-in of the supply chain players, logistics players, you need to have the buy-in of the buyers as well. So I think it takes quite a bit of time because this product is like, not a product on a farm. This product is a part of the supply chain. And the supply chains, the way they have been designed and structured so far, do not consider for this product, hardly, or do not consider for a cold chain originating from farm in India as compared to other developed countries. So I think that is probably the challenge which we all are faced with, that there is a way in which we can do things as a country. Most of the developing countries have been doing it because we all have to adapt. If infrastructure is not there, you figure out ways and means to work without that. So we have done that. We've quite gotten used to it. So it will take time to change. So whoever is kind of trying to do it, this is a long haul game. Come in for the long haul. The rewards are there, but you will fail many times and you can learn how to do. So yeah, I think that is what it's a lot of learning over the process. I don't know if I answered your question really.
Sure. No, absolutely. Yeah. No, but I think just taking off of what you just mentioned, Garima, you may have had similar learnings to Gautam sir in terms of the time and effort to really prove the value and show the income so that then you can really design a much better financial model, right? So just wanted to ask you from your experience, working with FPOs, are a lot of asset creation, is that common, right? Because a lot of times, tractors and JCBs, they're not owned, right? They're rented, they're leased out, they're, more of a service than an ownership, right? So, and bikes are, owned. But in your opinion, where should the ownership lie? At what level should the ownership lie for a cold storage system, which would work out best?
Yeah. So, thank you, Huda. Actually, in my experience, we have purchased the cold storage in the last November. So we have tried out two model with the one with the APC and carbon producer company, and another with the uh, entrepreneur model. So on the APC model, we have seen that the ownership, you're talking about the ownership, so I'm saying that the ownership is very important to keep at the FPC level. In at the time of the entrepreneurship, what happened that the farmer, they are charging 25 rupees per day per kg to the farmer, but that model is not working out. But at the case of the FPC, they are they are giving services to the farmer as well as to the FPC also. How? First day, what we are doing that at the initial level, we collect the product at the initial day of the harvesting. At the initial day of the harvesting, the production is less, so we aggregate the produce aggregate, then we transfer to the cold storage. And at that time, cold storage is very needed. And sometimes what happens when vendor say that we will not purchase. In some day they purchase, and some day they say today we will not purchase. That time, farmer get very stuck. Where should we sell this produce? At that time, cold storage is very important. Also, at some time, what happened that we know that in the coming days, 2 to 3 days, the prices is increasing up. Like at this time, the price of tomato is very high. At about here in Jharkhand, it about 100 rupees kg. So we know that the price is increasing these days. So we can keep 2 to 3 days at the cold storage. Then we will get the good price. At that time, also we keep the produce at the cold storage. And in some time, what happened that farmers comes daily basis to sell their produces. In some time, they left out. they could not able to sell their produces. At that time also, FTC purchase the produces and they sell that. So we are doing the two models. One is the FPU model and another is the entrepreneur model. So we are more comfortable and we are seeing that FTC is doing better than this entrepreneur model, because in the case of the Footy location, we have placed one cold storage. In that case, we have a revenue generation of around 7.5 lakh. In that revenue generation, about profit was 6 to 70,000. So we have a good experience in some location, but another we have also not a good experience in the Hazaribagh, because we are operating through the entrepreneur, and through the entrepreneur, farmer are not very coming forward to give produce, and they just want their money in daily basis. They don't want to keep that produce for 3 to 4 days as the cold storage. So in that model, FTC is the best model for me. And
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Garima. I want to ask you, Jofi, after listening to the short answers, who is your ideal customer? Who do you want to sell to? Is it the government? Is it the agri groups and FPCs? Is it individual farmers? Who's a good end user for you?
So, I mean, let me start off with what Devendra said. I think it's not a cold room by itself at the farm. I think it's the entire supply chain. And I would say the other round. I mean, ideal way, I would like to sell to the end consumer.
Okay.
So what I mean is, invest in the entire supply chain, pick up from the farmers. The value addition in this case is limited. It's only the chilling that is a value addition, and sell something which is much better to the farmer. Much better quality to the consumer. So if you look at the entire chain, I mean, who has to invest in the cold chain infrastructure? And by cold chain infrastructure, I mean farm, transit, in terms of refrigerated vans, and finally in terms of the last mile delivery. It's a person, or it's the entity which makes money out of it, right? And I take Garima's point absolutely. I mean, even whatever work I have done here or even earlier in drip irrigation, it's very clear the farmer wants to encash. I mean, he doesn't want to hold his produce for several days and wait for the money to come back. So there is somebody else who has to do it. Typically, the aggregator should do it. They should enable the entire cold chain and ensure that there is a delivery of a much better product to the end consumer. So to a simple answer to your question is, I would like to sell to the end consumer, because that's where the most value can be added through this.
Sure. So you mentioned, you need aggregators, you need, middle platforms, you need people that are actually playing that role. Vedant, you have been playing that role in one form or the other. So I just wanted to know, from you, not so much on, what role do these platforms play, but specifically what roles do these, farm to plate or farm to kitchen, what roles do these platforms play in creating assets for farmers and FPOs, and at the last mile? What roles do these platforms play?
Hello. Yeah. Regarding the discussion which was happening, I would want to add there, like first thing, who basically stocks a commodity? Any person, whenever there's an aggregation challenge, that I'm not able to aggregate one truckload of item so that I can supply to the market, then there you aggregate. There you may need a cold chamber or something. Similarly, at distribution end, whenever you're distributing goods to retailers or any processors, there you might need, for reliability and consistency, you might need again a cold chamber. And similarly, the third case is when you speculate. And generally, if you see who is the best person to speculate, whosoever is connected with the market, who has knowledge about the daily prices, what is happening, who knows the market where he can sell the goods. So first thing, in terms of targeting, whom should we sell regarding the list? What I would say is that always it shouldn't be farmers. It should be primarily aggregators or distributors, because these are the people who have understanding of these things. And these are basically part of the supply chain, and they know exactly when the commodity has to be sold, what value has to be done right out of it. So these are the best people. And what I've seen based on my experience is that once aggregators or distributors start using the technology or something, farmers automatically start implementing it. So basically, when we used to procure from farmers also, then we realized that when you start pitching to farmers, it is a little difficult. But when you start pitching to aggregators, and when aggregators start supplying to you, farmers automatically start following that. So that is one point. And the other point is regarding also, because since we are also part of the post-harvest supply chain, what I realized that any organized company which is coming right now, obviously they need cold chambers. Currently, if you see, Dehat is having centers at all destinations where you want reliability in terms of supply to retailers or whosoever companies there. There you need to stock some goods. So in all the cities where we are operating, we have a cold chamber at a destination. But obviously at source, that is a question mark there, because it depends on, again, it should make business sense, then only we go for that. The other problem, what I realize is that in terms of clarity of costing, like suppose right now we are a customer, I would say for this, but what would be my cost here in terms of that? That clarity, I think, is not there in terms of, if you see potato, it is like very organized commodity. You know very, very clearly that 2.3, 2.4 rupees is the charge right now per kg, which will be charged if you stock a commodity there. But what will be my costing here? Because that clarity, I think, is missing. What I think.
Sure. But from an ownership models, you're saying the ideally starting to promote ownership at a aggregator and distributor level will, you're saying, lead to
aggregator, distributor, and corporate companies. Yeah, corporates. All mandi agents and all these people are like very good targets for targeting this.
Sure,
because they have the maximum information about market.
Sure. Gautam sir, Garima, maybe Gautam sir first and then Garima. Do you agree? And if yes, why? And if no, why not?
For me, actually, what is the objective? Actually, when we people are working with the farmers, the basic objective to enhance the income and the livelihoods of the farmers, for the poor farmers. So by installing cold chamber or cold storage, what happened to us? I would say 80% of the farmers have reduced their spoilage, 80 to 100%. And 25% of their additional income has come out of this infrastructure. No doubt, this is a costly infrastructure and huge investment is there. But at initial cost, farmer producer organization is not at all a position to invest 20 lakhs or 15 lakhs rupees at a time. Because the break-even comes in later stage. So in any way, if at all it's a business for proposition type of thing, so the infrastructure can be arranged in a different loan model as well as a different grant model. But as far as the operation is concerned, if at all these type of infrastructures are provided with the farmers, definitely the basic objective of enhancing farmers' income, let's say, by 2022, the doubling of farmer incomes definitely can happen. Another thing is that whenever we are dealing with the product, so definitely there are few factors we need to decide, particularly the time, cost, quality, quantity, outreach. These infrastructure can provide enough space for them to decide which products and how the market can be achieved, marketable surplus from the production side can be achieved, as well as the better price fetching activity can be done with this infrastructure. So basically, I would say who owns that is different perspective, but how to manage all those things is also important for us. And I think the community or institution with whom this infrastructure is belonging to, definitely they should take the responsibility to do this.
Sure. So quick follow-up question, sir. Would you want to promote for solar cold storage, which is a common good, right? It's infrastructure for a common good for future generations for income increase, grant or loan? And so where should the grant go?
No. It should be a mixture of grant and loan.
Okay.
I would say, not at all. Okay. Because if at all we are talking about loan, immediately it may so happen the farmer producer organization or the entrepreneur who has the capacity of investing 20 lakhs or 15 lakhs rupees, so definitely they can own it. But I would suggest first if at all I am running a business with the institution, first we should take the lease, we should take the pilot on lease basis before investing in a huge amount in this infrastructure. If it is running well, so definitely then they can go for a loan-based model, and it is successful, I think.
Okay. And grants, in terms of grants?
Whatever grants is available, grants are available. Grants are not easily available in any aspects. But the necessity of cold storage is essential. So that's why whether grants are available or not, that doesn't matter. You have to go for storage of material. So I would give some example. The crop shelf life of few vegetables like leafy vegetables, cucumber and greens can be increased for 10 days. So if at all you are not able to sell those things in 1 day or 2 days, you can also keep up for 10 days. So that means the farmers are not getting, farmers are getting better prices out of this. So the objective of our imposition is that the farmers can.
Got it. Yeah. So, I mean, Garima, just taking off of what Gautam sir said, he said grants are not available easily, but coming from a farmer's perspective, what do you want to push for? Do you want to push for grants or do you want to push for loans?
Grant is always a cushion for us also to work with, but I will suggest it should be a combination of both. As Gautam sir said that it should be a combination of both grant as well as the loan also. Through lease, I don't know how much it is possible. I don't understand, but grant and as well as loan. But because a loan will also not start, and the repayment of the loan is not a start from the day one day from the next month onward. So there must be a gap between 3 to 4 months so that they can understand the business, the whole business of that region. So there must be a gestation period of 3 to 4 months to, and then after the grant, some loan will be applicable. Initially, the loan will be the repayment of the payment is less, and the later on it can maybe the bullet payment, and through the more payment can be done. So it should be combination of both grant as well as.
Sure. Devendra, coming to you, what are the pros and cons of the lease model? I think also for a few others that have asked, and Gariba, what are both the pros and the cons of the lease model? And specifically, where should subsidies go? Where should grants go? We can't hear you. You're on mute.
So I think this has been the very interesting question we have been grappling with for quite some time. Okay, so see, I think if you would have asked me this question, say 4 months before, I would have told you, forget subsidy and loans, just stick to lease. Because making loans happen is impossible. I will tell you why. If you look at farmers, okay, let's say we discuss in 3 segments. Farmers who are, say, more progressive, who are like a farmer plus aggregator, or kind of group into FPOs. And the third segment is, say, the aggregators themselves. Okay. Now, when we talk about farmers and FPOs, there are a lot of challenges in getting them financed. Already they have a land which is kind of pledged elsewhere. And if you try to make a loan happen for them, it will take a year. I still have farmers, whom we have been able to get loans done in a period of a year. Okay. And the subsidy which was there was kind of back-ended. So if you don't get the loan, you don't get the subsidy. Okay. This is under the NIDH norms, the government. We kind of went through all the hard work to get this technology enlisted in the Ministry of Agriculture. Then we also convinced a couple of banks to take this as a financing product. But what we realized is that no matter what we do, the farmers are having land issues. The FPOs do not have balance sheets which are audited. The directors are not willing to become guarantors. So the loan thing didn't really work, at least 3 months before this. And what we realized is that, instead of spending time and energy to make the loan work from them, why don't we spend more time in making the product more cost economical? Why don't we spend time on making the technology more affordable? That is something which seemed more doable than the financing. Okay, so let us just do lease, okay, and let us kind of try to get people to get a taste of the technology, okay. And now, when you look at it in the current situation, which is the Agri Infra Fund has been announced. And what we are saying is you can finance agri infra for post-harvest and cold chain near the farm gate, okay? And it could be used as collection centers by aggregators, or it could be used as collection centers by farmers or whatever, a group of farmers. And you can get a credit guarantee up to 2 crores. So if this particular scheme or this particular proposal of 1 lakh crores removes the requirement of collateral for banks to take from farmers or aggregators or a group of farmers, okay, I think it could be a game changer in terms of making financing happen, okay? So that is that. But other than that, what we have seen is that whenever you try to work for financing, mostly the farmer loses their harvest cycle. So you will see that you thought I will be having harvesting after 3-4 months. Let me go for the product and let me get the financing. And in most cases, not your whole process doesn't really happen sometimes. So that is what we've seen, because on the bank's level as well, on the branch level, say we spoke to SBI on the head office level, but for that information to penetrate on the ground level, maybe to a branch manager in one particular part of village, it's pretty challenging. If they have it live in their portal as well, still it doesn't understand it. So making that education happen is pretty challenging. So until we are able to create a minimum viable scale of the products, on the field, okay, until then, nobody's gonna really realize what it can do. So we need to attain a minimum volume, okay, for people to start understanding what this is about, how this is going to add value. Until we do that, financing will continue to be a challenge. Say previously it would take us 6 months to 9 months. Now we can hope that the Agri Infra Fund, it could go down to 2 to 3 months. Because the land issue, Patwari issue, all those issues are kind of going out of the way. But other than that, what I think is, even if you go with leasing, okay, say depending upon certain commodities, you can probably be, a lot more efficient without taking a lot of risk, okay. We offer systems on quarterly lease. You take it on quarterly lease and you use it, and then you see how is it working out for you. You see if you're getting the returns. Then you think about, you're more confident and you feel you can make the bet. Then you go about taking the bet to buy it. But other than that, it's like you take it on lease, you make your money right there, right then, and then you move forward in life. So we felt leasing would be a lot more robust model to kind of scale, to kind of demonstrate than the financing. So yeah, I think that those are my 2 cents.
You didn't answer what are the cons of leasing. I think it's great, but what are the drawbacks of lease model?
So I think there are no cons of leasing. It's just you don't get to own the product. It's not a 10-year thing. I think that's the only con of leasing. Even if in terms of, Vedant was talking about the economics of, these kind of solutions. Like potato is very clear, 2 to 2.5 rupees.
Sure.
Okay. Now, what I think is that the commodities we are focusing on are a lot more different, a lot more perishable. So we are not really looking at like 4 months, 5 months, 6 months cold storage of commodities like potato over here.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Potato, you have like a 5,000 ton cold store where you are dumping a lot of produce and you can store it for very long. So the model itself is completely different. The commodity and the supply chain is completely different. Okay.
Sure.
So from that particular perspective, what we feel is that, say, in terms of the leasing cost of the commodity, normally we've seen, say, for a rose farmer would kind of store the commodity for not more than 2-3 days or 4-5 days or max 6-7 days. And by having access to cooling, he would end up re-cooling his produce and sending it to farther markets. He would harvest a little later, okay, till the point in time when the bud size is big enough to get in the right grade pricing, and then he would send it. He would also be able to provide fresher produce to his buyers. So they are more likely to source from him. Okay.
Sure.
So what we've seen, it leads to almost a 1 rupee per stick kind of a benefit. So normally if he's selling for 3, he can sell it for 4. Okay. 25% increment. And the cost he would pay, okay, per stick, which will be like very less, because in this kind of a unit you can store around 40,000 to 50,000 sticks.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure, yeah.
So within a period of, say, in potato, you end up making, say, around $20 over the course of 6 months. Okay, and you spend 2.5 rupees. Whereas in case of roses, you are probably spending, say, 30,000 rupees or 25,000 rupees as a lease rental, okay, and storing around 40,000 sticks of roses. And you're probably rotating the unit 3 times in a month. So your overall capacity goes to 1.2 lakh sticks. So you're spending like 25 paisa per stick approximately. And you're making 1 rupee. So you're making 75 paisa more.
Sure.
So the whole model in case of leasing is very different. It leads to very quick paybacks, very immediate returns for the, depending upon the commodity. So I would really urge people to not think in terms of cold stores or in terms of infrastructure. Things in terms of commodity supply chains. And the solution and the technologies we are providing will make different use cases for different commodities.
Sure.
So each commodity won't be similar. So you have to focus on commodity supply chains and then apply the technology and use it in a very different manner. So we've used for roses in a very different manner. We've used it for, say, like the tubers with a very different manner.
Sure.
So that is where the economics of lease actually comes out. So it's a very low risk way to really try it out. Another thing about leasing is that a lot of farmers we have seen grow very seasonal produce. Okay. And so they use it for 2-3 months and they are done. What do you do with the asset after that? It's lying empty. Okay. So it's much better that you move it to somebody else. So say for protected cultivation, the harvesting period is 8-9 months. So then it makes sense to buy.
Sure.
If you're doing a community use, it makes sense to buy. Okay.
Sure.
Ideally, I would love if my product is bought. Okay. You see that the leasing is a much better way to actually do the utilization. Because I've seen in Nasik that a lot of cold rooms are actually lying unutilized post the exports of grapes are done.
Yeah, I mean, just coming to Jofi on just taking off of what Devendra was saying, and there's lease is a low risk model, but then you said you still prefer to sell it. But coming to Jofi, what are the drawbacks of the lease model, and generally your experience given on subsidies, lease, finance as well? On assets.
So, just one thing. Lease is a low risk model for the customer, not for me.
Exactly what I meant when I said when I asked for drawbacks. Sure. Go
ahead. So I think one big problem of lease is as a technology provider is also giving the equipment on lease. It's about capacity utilization. So you all know that typically when you start off, the capacity utilization is low. So do you charge a fixed rental or do you charge a per unit rental? And all that impacts your return on the investment. Ideally, a customer would want charge on a per kg, but then you're losing money for the first 4, 5, 6 months, and then it's incumbent on you to ensure that the customer utilization is high, because the customer then has no motivation to utilize it more and pay you back more. The second challenge, and this is something I've seen very particular, is that eventually, even if you give on lease, people want to own the equipment. So we have been trying to push people to say that just take it on a pure lease, use it for a year, 2 years, 3 years. Because the moment they want to own the equipment after 3 to 4 years, the cost per unit goes up or the cost per month goes up. And what we try to tell them is that it's our equipment, we will maintain it. We can expand the life, we can change your rates after the first 3 to 4 years. When the capital is realized. But there is a tendency that, especially when you deal with farmers, like what we do with some farms in Karnataka, everybody wants to own it after 3 to 4 months, which is in a way good for us, because the fact that they don't own the machine, they take care of the machine better. But the negative is that then the cost is high. I would only say, I think lease is the way to go if you really want to expand it. The important thing in lease is not just as a cold chain or a cold room or whatever else you provide, but again, Devendra was searching, what is the business model? How is that lease of the cold chain equipment actually going to change? Like, can I go to somebody and say, a farmer or an aggregator, and say, you pay me 15,000 rupees of rent, and what you'll earn because of this is 30 to 40,000 rupees. Now, wherever we have been able to do that, we have been able to convince, rather than saying that, okay, you need cold chain and this equipment costs 15,000 rupees, that really doesn't work.
Right.
So I think that's important. And again, as you said, every commodity works different. We work a lot with milk. Milk is very different. We do some cold rooms for meat. There it is different. Again,
Sure, sure.
fruit vegetables will be totally different. So you need to figure out what is the business model and where you can add value, and then have a lease rental which is
Sure.
far lower than the value generated for the farmer. And that's where the whole trick is,
Sure, sure. Sure, no, thanks. And I think,
Yep.
Vedant, the last question to you, and then we'll take a few questions, a couple of questions, because we don't have that much time, and then one final round of closing question that I have. But Vedant, yeah, coming to the, question of, it's about commodities, which commodities, supply chains, and it's all about that, yeah? Not really about the technology per se, but technology plugs in, but where you can show the most value, right? Your experience with subsidies versus lease versus finance in the asset creation and technology side within the supply chains that you've been working in.
Hello. Yeah.
Yeah.
For as a end user, because we are end user of it. So what I would say is that obviously lease model is obviously better for us. And also in terms of like if you talk about cold storages, where there you get subsidy, I think 35-40% subsidy, I think in terms of construction. So obviously subsidy, if there is a subsidy, obviously it works very well. And financing option, I think generally what I've seen is for obviously companies, it is generally easier to get financing for companies. And in terms of other thing is like regarding one thing I would want to know specifically, that there should be enough clarity in terms of like, suppose we are an end consumer and what will be my per unit charge after taking the commodity. Suppose like my rental cost is 30,000 per month. After that, obviously there will be some operational costs involved. Suppose some particular electricity or some other thing. So that clarity should also be there for a person to take a decision fast. Because I think that is what I think is by going through different websites of companies, that was not clearly visible there. That is one. And the second point is that please understand, like what I understand is that market is full of entrepreneurs and all these people are willing to go the extra mile if there's some visibility in terms of extra profit. Local aggregator, distributor, all these people are willing to do that. But the only concern is that there should be some clarity in terms of costing. That should be very there. And financing, I would say that financing or other things, people arrange. What I would say is that obviously for farmers, there's a need, but for aggregators and other people, if there is a profit, if there's a clear-cut viability of the model, people would definitely arrange that.
Sure. No, thanks so much. I think we'll try and take a few questions, but I would also request panelists, if you see questions which you're able to answer, you may directly type answer, and some of the questions I'll just pick out and direct to you as well. So I'm going to just maybe come to Gautam sir from Harsha Trust. There's a question here on, if the cold storage is bank financed by the FPO, how do they repay? If it's bank financed, do they charge member farmers to use it? What kind of tariffs? So what is that process? And maybe Garima, if you could also talk about the same thing from your experience.
Yeah, good question. I think all the financial parameters and indicators as well as ratios are not applicable to farmers because there is no current ratio. Farmers are not able to understand all those ratios. But in case of we are coming to the institution, particularly FPOs, definitely we need to calculate all those things because FPO is running the business and it is being entitled as the enterprise. So I would say that definitely when we people are who is running the FPOs and FPOs are willing to take the responsibility of taking the loan and repaying the loan, definitely they need to calculate the cash flow as well. So on that basis, actually, so that's why I told earlier, this is time, cost, quality, quantity, and outreach is more important in calculating all those factors. So if at all the cost, I am talking about time. Time means the time of harvesting and time of procurement. If it is not matching with the market, so definitely we are going to lose. And so that's why it is very important to make costing according to the quality, quantity, so that the available cash flow can decide in which way you want to repay the amount. But I think the break-even for one FPO having only 200 to 300 members is very critical, very crucial, and it is not possible in a time period of near about 2 to 3 years to repay entire the loan, because almost you have to look into the farmers' benefit as well. You have to pay the interest, pay the profit to the farmers as well. So keeping the interest of the farmers in view, definitely it will take 3 to 5 years at least to come to this position.
Sure. Garima?
Yeah, Huda, can we repeat the question, please?
Basically, if a cold storage is financed by the FPO, how do they repay? Do they charge member farmers to use it, and what are the tariffs like?
Okay. This time, in my experience, what FPC do, they collect the produces from the farmer and they purchase it from the farmer and they sell it to the within the state or out of the state, and the margin they keep in the at the FPC level. So we can say that till now in the 4 to 5 months of the transaction in one FPC, we have an experience of 7.5 lakh of revenue generated, and out of that, 50,000 to 60,000 is a profit. So we can say that if the whole year, whole month, if the production is good and the cold storage is also running good, then we can say that 1 lakh, 2 lakh can be profit can be generated from the cold storage, and within 5 to 6 months, 5 to 6 years, it can the 50% of the cost of the cold storage is about 15 lakh. So it's huge, not very easy. So easy to repay this amount. So I think it will take time. But I have also not experienced so that I can say, but it take time, 6 to 7 years. It will take time.
Okay. Those are some interesting timelines coming up there. But I think given time, I just want to, and I think these are really great questions. And I do want to say a lot of them, we will answer every single one of them. We will send it to the panelists and make sure that they're answered. And a lot of them, I think we will also sort of send you information on it if that's helpful. But I do want to just, given the time, give each of the panelists to give some closing remarks. And specifically a couple of maybe just 1 or 2 top recommendations for the policy panel. What would you push for? So maybe Garima, we'll start with you.
One recommendation for the
policy. Yes. And closing remarks, if any.
For the policymaker, I could recommend that if the subsidy can be easily available from the NABARD or from the any institutions, that could be good. And how can we connect that subsidy? So that I would suggest to make it in the policy.
Okay, got it. Jofi, you want to go next? Closing remarks and inputs for the policy session.
I mean, so let me start with the inputs first. I think first and foremost is on taxation. The GST for cold storage equipment is 18%, which I feel, which is same as air conditioners or refrigerators. I think it's too high. We should be taxed similar to what farm equipment is, or 5% or below. The second thing, and I may not be a very popular guy for saying this, but I say the focus has to be on productivity and not subsidy. I think subsidy is a lazy way to do it, but if you actually focus on increasing the productivity of the farmers, then all this utilization comes into place and the equipment can pay for itself. So that's kind of the. And third is, as technology provider, me and Devinder, we would love to put in more and more equipment. And a big constraint is debt and the cost of debt. So I think it's important that we have much lower cost of debt to, rapidly ramp up what we're because right now it's killing. So, especially when we are new companies with not that kind of collateral or infrastructure already in place. So this would be my 3 recommendations. In terms of closing remarks, I would just say this. As I said, there is a beautiful model dairy, and unfortunately, because we are so much into dairy, I keep going back to that. But there is a community chilling which works. Now, whether it is done by the aggregator, whether it is done by FPO, I think that's the model that can kind of take this off to a much deeper level for fruits and vegetables. And the second thing is focus on the supply chain. It's not about putting only cold room at the at the farm end.
Right.
I mean, it's about
Right.
cold room plus transit plus end consumer, because at the end of the day, the value has to translate and somebody has to pay for it, or somebody has to get something better because, cold chain has been implemented. So look at it from a supply chain perspective and look at it from a community chilling perspective at the farm level. I mean, this would be my two
Sure.
closing remarks.
Sure. Got it. Thank you, Jofi. Devendra, on to you.
Yeah. So I think in terms of the business model, I think Jofi mentioned all the very relevant points. I would kind of second all of them. Apart from just the setting up a cold room, I think you should look at figuring out how you can take your commodity to better buyers. Okay, and the whole process of setting up a cold store is not about getting a higher price for your produce. It's about expanding your market. So from a grower perspective, aggregator perspective, whatever perspective, if you want to do larger volumes of perishable commodities, you should look at access to cold chain. Cold chain will help you go to farther markets. It can help a pomegranate farmer get to Singapore by sea if it is applied properly. Okay, so that is where we really need to be looking at. Okay, in the future. Okay, but I agree that we need to start off. People are facing challenges near the farm as well, and farm level cooling, access to cooling for people needs to be enabled. So when I look at parallels in the solar industry, other agriculture, solar powered products, okay, I see solar pumping as a very close brother or a sister of this particular system. And the way the government has really focused around scaling that up, I feel similar impetus should be done by MNRE,
Right.
not Ministry of Agriculture. Ministry of Agriculture is not married to solar. Ministry of New and Renewable Energy is married to solar, biogas, hybrid, like New Leaf is doing. So those guys are really focused on these aspects. So they should try to put together a scheme similar to solar pumps for solar cold stores. That is when probably Garima and Gotham will see that their farmers, their FPOs are really able to access it. I feel debt as a solution. Our farm level folks are not really ready to use debt to really deploy these kind of assets. And there's a long way they have to go. So first step wherein we need to showcase people how this is being used. Okay, so that has to be like all grant if it is happening in a manner which is standalone, like for storage. Okay, so for that perspective, it's not. I'm not talking about having subsidies. I'm not talking about having loans. I'm saying just have subsidies similar to solar pumping and deploy more of these storages.
Sure.
The Ministry of New and Renewable Energy should take that. Okay, that is point number one. Point number two, if you are really looking at doing a supply chain play, like taking commodities to farther markets and something providing consistency to your buyers, as Vedant was suggesting, or ensuring that your aggregation is happening at the source. You don't have to do suboptimal logistics. If you're doing a supply chain play, if you're sending your produce from Bihar to Bangalore, then you don't really need anything. You take it on lease, you will make money on the go.
Sure.
Okay. So that is what my second remark is. Okay, the agri-infra fund which we are talking about, though, it could enable village-level entrepreneur or aggregator kind of models, wherein they could access this and create aggregation centers. Okay, and that should actually materialize into removing the condition of the land, requirement of the land as a collateral. From the majority of banks should feel comfortable that we have this guarantee. Now we don't need to worry about taking land as a collateral. So that should really happen. The next aspect is subsidy should also be provided not just for fixed infrastructure. It should be provided for portable infrastructure as well. So if a VLE is kind of buying it and he is leasing it out to multiple farmer groups, then he should be able to get subsidy. In today's norms, you are not allowed to get subsidy on that.
Right.
Okay. So that is, in terms of subsidy disbursement mechanisms, they should be much more simpler. I think it's similar to what MNRE is doing. For solar pumping. It's like a pretty effective mechanism. We've been able to deploy almost 60,000-70,000 systems every year. Okay. So I think that would be a good start. So once, I'm not saying you keep on doing that always. You need to at least reach a minimum volume in that manner. And then you can look at probably having other models. I feel this product, this technology can be sustainable without even subsidies or loans. But you have to choose the right business model, but then it will be very focused to very perishable commodities.
Sure.
Where there is high value, like pomegranate, grape, all of these. But if you want to use it for multiple commodities and give it access to a lot of farmers, okay, we guys are also working to bring down the cost, okay?
Sure.
And you can be rest assured, we have seen in the other businesses we are doing, we've seen cost reduction to the extent of 80% over the course of life. Okay, we were selling some solar things in early for 1 lakh rupees. Now we are selling them for 25-30K. So we feel this would happen over here as well, and we are, as technology providers, are committed to do that. But due to that particular volume, to get that particular state, there needs to be an impetus which needs to come in.
Sure.
Okay. So yeah, I think we're also looking at partners, and not just us trying to go and deploy these. We're looking at different people in different areas who are kind of say even in solar pumping to come in and take up this technology in those areas and create more education.
Yeah,
so I think
absolutely. Yeah, leveraging partners and networks. Absolutely agree. I think just before I move to Vedant and then Gautam, so for the final closing remarks and any policy inputs, you mentioned minimum viable quantity twice. So just according to you, what is the estimated minimum kind of scale that you need to really kind of, then it naturally scales? What is that number?
I think, it is not about a number for the whole country.
Sure.
It will be, of course, a number for, say, a commodity or for a particular region.
Sure.
So you at least need to have, say, 100, 200 units in a particular region.
Okay, got it.
Or, say, a particular region for it to start making sense. There need to be enough eyeballs. And if you talk about the country, I don't know, like, say, for solar pumps, I think it was probably 5,000 to 10,000, which really took off the technology.
Right. Great. Vedant, closing remarks.
I guess most of the points Devendra has covered.
Sure.
So lastly, what I would say is that, like, obviously, it's a very good point that for export, if government wants to export, promote export, then government can give some extra benefits whenever we are exporting FNV. And obviously, when we are exporting FNV, then cold chamber or some cold sort of supply chain would be required automatically for that. So I think that is it. Yeah. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, Vedant. Gautam sir, last word.
It is very easy to suggest, but it is very difficult to implement in my case. So I wish if the finances are available easily, so definitely many things can be done. This is first point that I would suggest for the policymakers, that financing to either to farmers or to enterprise or to FPOs should be very easy and simple. And second thing, I would say that capacity building of the people who are involved in these spaces. In most of the cases, I have also seen the inefficient handling of the perishable goods, because it is again going to lose.
Yeah.
And third thing that all of the panel members also said, that there is inadequate farm gate to mobile infrastructures are available it's a chain system. It is not a standalone thing. So definitely we need to connect all those things. So mobile vans, availability of the mobile vans and adequate farm gate infrastructure should be there, so that entire value chain can be established. And third and fourth thing is definitely monitoring and traceability with respect to the remote mechanism, as the technology providers are talking about. That is also important for me.
Sure. Thank you so much, Gautamji. So, and thank you so much to all the panelists. I think I'm not going to try and summarize given the time, but I think we got very crisp and really strong insights on the ownership models, the financial models, the supply chain models, and the enabling conditions to actually help make these from 340 to 3,400 to 30,000, hopefully within not in the longer term, but within the near future. So thank you so much to all the panelists. To all the panelists and attendees, the video and the documents and the summarized sort of insights will be shared. Please do join us next Friday. Next Friday, we're having the session on policy. It will be moderated by Harish Hande. We have on the panel champions from AEEE, NABARD, NRLM, IFHD, and state level agri ministers. So hopefully that will be an interesting discussion as well. Please do join and be as vocal as possible. If you have anything advanced to send us that you want to ask or put forward, we'd be happy to put that together. And so next, one last thing to everyone just before you leave. Next Friday, the session starts half an hour earlier. So we're doing a 2-hour session, because right in the beginning of the session, there's an inauguration of a cold storage in Sambalpur that's happening. So you can see the inauguration, and then we'll dive into the session after the first half an hour. So it's from 5 to 7 next Friday. Thank you so much. Thank you to all the panelists, and thank you to all the attendees for coming. Feel free to send us feedback. Thank you.